Welcome to Lessons in Leadership. Steve Adubato, the great Mary Gamba. Mary, how are we doing today? This is one of the last shows we're taping.
We're doing great. And I always say this at the end of the day, and I mean it. And Elvin, don't get mad at me, our director in the background. I could do 3 or 4 more shows today. At the rate we're going, we've had a great tape day, a lot of fantastic guests, and most importantly, a lot of leadership lessons learned as always.
Well said. I like that, Mary. We're going to be joined by Dr. Jeff Boscamp, the Interim Dean at the Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine, in just a moment. And is Jeff on the air right now? Is he, Elvin, is he on? So,
Yeah, he's
Jeff
on.
Mary, do me a favor. Can you just let everyone know who sponsors Lessons in Leadership so Dr. Boscamp can hear and see how much support we actually have?
Yeah, we'll show them all the love, Dr. Boscamp. So we've got Veolia, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the New Jersey Sharing Network, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, Seton Hall University, and the Great Bacino Leadership Institute, the North Ward Center, Kessler Foundation, and Delta Dental of New Jersey.
So this half hour would just be filled up with us naming our sponsors. That's the entire show.
That's it, done.
Hey, Jeff Boscamp, my good friend Jeff Boscamp, who is the Interim Dean, Dr. Jeff Boscamp, Interim Dean, I'll get that out, Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine. Jeff, how you doing?
Doing great, Steve. Always good to see you and Mary as well. So good day for me as well, following Mary's lead.
I like that. I like that. Hey, Jeff, this is a little looser than our public broadcasting programming, a little bit looser, meaning there aren't as many rules. Real quick, why do you love wine?
Why do I love wine? Mostly because it tastes good. It's, you know, I love wine because I find it so interesting and it so reflects all the different soil and people that make it across the world. So no two wines are the same. They're influenced by the people who make it and the place it grows. It's like sometimes taking a world trip without going anywhere.
Jeff, Mary, you didn't know this, but
I just want to open up a bottle of wine right now.
But I knew this from Jeff, that he is a wine expert, connoisseur, and aficionado. I just want to get that out of the way. Can we talk leadership?
And an educator, Steve, like that fits, right?
He does seminars on wine.
I have 80 first-year medical students who are taking my wine course right now.
Hold on, what the Hackensack?
Are you really teaching a wine course? And if so, can we put up like a website where people can
go? Mary, it's a school of medicine. You have to get into the school of medicine.
I thought he was really doing this on the side as an extra side gig.
Oh yeah,
he's for my students. But if the Mary Gamba scholarship is comes into play, you can be a member of the wine course.
Thank you so much. I'd like to be in that circle. Thank you.
No, Mary, he was just pitching for money. You don't follow it.
Oh, I understand. My sister went to Seton Hall, Dr. Boscamp, so that's got to count for something. She's a Seton Hall grad.
We, Seton Hall is our most favored nation university, and we've done so many wonderful collaborative things with Seton Hall.
Absolutely, but the Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine that I know well, I've actually taught there. I'll continue to teach there moving forward. But I'm curious about this, Jeff. You and I have known each other a long time, and I've seen you evolve as a leader and in the role as the dean now. Question: where would you say your greatest growth has come in, let's say, the last few years as a leader? You've gotten even better at or improved in the area of? Please, Jeff.
So, I mean, in the last few years, how do you even not, when you answer that question, how do you not mention COVID? And, that has just changed, I think, how all of us have done everything. And so I think, as you know, Steve, I led the Children's Hospital at Hackensack University Medical Center for 14 years before I was given this project by our CEO, Bob Garrett, to start a new medical school, the first private medical school in New Jersey. And so that transition of leading a children's hospital to becoming one of the leaders of the medical school wasn't so hard. But then, through COVID, everything became hard. And we had to pivot immediately. Instead of being in front of the classroom, which I love, and talking to students, all of a sudden trying to do it on Zoom, which is never quite the same. But I have to tell you, in my whole career as an educator, as an administrator, COVID could also bring out some very good things in people. And I'll tell you a quick story that changed me and everything that I do. And that is that in the middle of March of 2020, as everything was falling apart And our medical students who had only been for several months in the hospitals taking care of patients, all of a sudden we didn't have PPE. We didn't have any way to protect them. All the patients had the same disease. So how do you teach that when we don't even know anything about it? And it was a national movement. We had to pull all the students out. They couldn't go. So how in the world are we going to teach about anything, when the students are now at home, when they're supposed to be doing clinical work? So we had this idea. I'm an infectious disease specialist, so of course I'm in the middle of COVID. And I had this idea that I would take 8 medical students who were really my star students in our infectious disease course and said, we're going to virtually have you take care of COVID. And so I was getting calls from the clinical team that, hey, Jeff, everything's changing. Whatever we thought we were doing for the patients yesterday, it doesn't work today. There's new stuff. We can't keep up with the research. I said, I've got 8 medical students. We're going to go to the research every single day. I'm going to work with the librarians at the medical school, and I'm going to teach COVID live as it changes every day. And for 6 weeks, I met with those students every single day. They brought me everything that was new. We went through it all together. We put out, they sat on the committees of how you take care of kids, how you take care of OB patients, how you take care of surgery patients, of all the medical ICU patients. And each of them sat on one of those committees. Those committees fed them questions, and they went to the literature and asked them and brought them back so that we could maintain. And so at the end, they wrote 70 articles that were published in 6 weeks. And the whole idea of this innovation of using students and teaching the course live as we learn about it was published in Academic Medicine, which is really the prestigious journal of education. So for me, I wasn't sure I had time to do this or whatever. It was the most fulfilling educational experience I've ever had.
Hey, Mary, check this out. As you listen to Dr. Boscamp, is it not a fact that for the greatest leaders, every challenge, even a serious, deadly, confusing challenge, issue, disease like COVID presents opportunity? Mary?
100%. And just listening to Dr. Boscamp, the best leaders are those who see a challenge as an opportunity, who see that challenge as, hey, what can we be doing differently, instead of burying their heads in the sand. And think about it, if our physicians and clinicians and all of those in medicine were to just throw their hands up the air, where would we be today? So I thank you and all the physicians who have really just made a difference, and we're still learning and growing 2.5 years into it now.
Hey, Jeff, let's do this. We're going to roll some footage of you. I believe it's the commencement speech of the first graduating class out of the School of Medicine. Am I correct?
So it's our second graduation, but it was the first full graduation where we, had students going out nationally for their residencies.
Got it. I also want to acknowledge the late Dr. Bonnie Stanton, who was the founding dean that Jeff worked very closely with. Real quick on this, because you and I talked about this offline. Your commencement speech was highly personal, human, and you wanted to make a powerful connection with those students. Talk about how you prepared for that, because I connect leadership and communication, as you well know, all the time.
Yeah, no, we had a very, very rough 6 months at the School of Medicine. Dr. Stanton's passing in January was tragic and totally unexpected. And we really had to hold the community together. I mean, we continued all of our education efforts, never missed a beat, but nonetheless, everybody was devastated. She had provided such great guidance and a foundation for all of us to play off of. But it was a rough 6 months. And I felt, as that first class came to the end of their career, she knew and I knew that small class that was the original class better than anybody. And people that have started medical schools have always said that first class is a class you never forget, and every single person. So this commencement was incredibly important to us as a community, and for me as the new dean, to be able to communicate, as you said, and just be able to recognize who these students are that were graduating and what had happened in this school. So that, as I started to put the commencement address together, it really came to me that the theme throughout what we've done over the past 4 years of having students and good 6 or 7 years of starting the school was that, we were being rewarded for taking risks. And there was, at this commencement, we understood, and I wanted to put forth just how important risk-taking was as we sent these students off to the world to have a career in medicine. And that was my theme in terms of 3 major buckets. One, that we attracted Dr. Stanton, who is one of the great academicians in in the country, editor of the textbook of her field, had been, just tremendous accolades, mid-60s, has done everything, is the vice dean for research at a major university. Why in the world does she all of a sudden decide that she's going to pull up roots, living near her daughter, grandkids, everything, and come and start a new medical school out of nothing just because Hackensack Meridian Health said, we want to do this and we're going to do it well? She believed that, and she took this risk. Bucket 2, Hackensack Meridian, a health system. They're not an educational institution. Why in the world are they all of a sudden going to say, we're going to get in the education business? Doesn't make financial sense at all, right? But Bob Garrett saying, the only way we're going to change this health system is to get in early and help shape the next generation of doctors. All right. And then, of course, the other risk takers is the students who said, I'm going to give untried medical school a shot, even though I could go to other places. Amazing risk takers.
Leadership and risk taking, strategic, thoughtful risk taking. Also, status quo, never an option. Dr. Jeff Boscamp, I can't thank you enough for joining us. Dr. Boscamp is the Interim Dean, Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine. All the best, my friend. We will have a glass of wine down the road and you will help me understand what exactly I'm drinking and why. Thank you, Jeff.
Absolutely. Mary, Steve, always a pleasure to be with you, and always a fun experience.
Always fun. We'll be right back on Lessons in Leadership right after this. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, Kessler Foundation, Veolia, Resourcing the World, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague, Mary Gamba, has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA, and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ, and Commerce Magazine. Welcome back, folks. This is Lessons in Leadership, but we're also using this particular segment for our one-on-one program to get to make sure an additional audience, our public television audience, sees us. We're joined by our leader in public broadcasting, Neal Shapiro, President and CEO of the WNET Group. Neal, how are we doing?
We're doing well. How about you, Steve?
We're doing great. We're taping this right before the 4th of July. Neal, you and I have talked about leadership, innovation, offline, online for a long time, and not just talked about it, you've lived it. What would you say 2.5 years plus into COVID, the most significant leadership lesson you have learned has been?
I think it's to be nimble. I think a lot of the things I was sure about that I thought I knew for sure have turned out not to be true. And I think it's about thinking about what's important both to your product and your people, and being flexible. If COVID has taught us nothing else, it's that things change and that we have to be, I think, flexible to meet those challenges.
Mary, before you jump in, I want to follow up on this with Neal. Neal, some of our guests on Lessons in Leadership have actually said that COVID has created actually with all the horrific, 1 million people losing their lives plus in our nation, so many people suffering, it's created opportunities. Do you see it that way as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, before COVID, we did an employee satisfaction survey, and our employees said they didn't like having little work carrels and offices. They wanted more space, like Central Perk on Friends. They wanted couches and chairs, and they wanted people to take their computers wherever they went. And I said to the architects, how can I do this? And they said, well, you're gonna have 40% of your workforce stay home. And I said, how am I ever gonna have 40% of my workforce stay home? Well, now I can have 100% of my workforce that can stay home. But I think it's an example to realize, I think we were worried as managers, how do we keep track of people? How do we know who's productive? And we just measured really productivity too often by attendance. I just looked out and saw someone there. And too often it was like parallel play. Like anybody who came here and just pounded away at their computer, that was considered working. I think we realized that's not the way to measure success anymore. And that I've always felt like happy employees are better employees. And I think there's now a better way to achieve a work-life balance than we had before.
It's well said. Mary and I often talk about the difference between activity. You're there, I know you're in the office, you're having a meeting versus impact. We try to focus more on impact. Pick it up from there, Mary.
Yeah, definitely, Neal. So no money, no mission. We are a nonprofit at 13 WNET. You're constantly trying to raise those necessary dollars to do the important work that we do, especially during the pandemic. What were some of the keys and lessons you learned in terms of building those relationships and still bringing in those important dollars when everybody was spread so thin?
Actually, I think what I learned is that you should never underestimate both the value of your mission, because COVID made ours even more clear. In so many ways, public media stepped up, whether it was just there to provide important news and information, and especially that got lost as some media turned to other things, whether it's providing incredible diversions to reminding people that though Broadway was closed, we still had Broadway plays.
That's right.
And what it was stepping into education. When schools closed down, we worked with teachers, and it was like springing up 80 classrooms or 80,000 classrooms. I mean, I heard from so many people that said public media filled a place in our lives that we hadn't really thought about. And the other thing is, while you're doing it and after, to remind people about that. Actually, you shouldn't be shy about asking for support, even in times like COVID. Because I think it is fresh on people's minds, and people do want to reward people who are doing good work. So I think that's the other thing we learned. I was so worried that as the country shut down, I thought our funding was shut down, but in fact, people really stepped up.
Along those lines, Neal, we talk about innovation, leadership and innovation, the connection. I'm going to do the math. 11 years ago, almost as we do this program right before the 4th of July, you led the effort to create what is now NJPBS. And we've said this so many times, if it were not for that effort, there would be some black hole. I don't know what would be there, Neal. That was innovation. Metro Focus. Every night, check it out on WNET, NJPBS, WLIW. Innovation, constant innovation. At NJPAC, there's a series going on with NJPBS art series. Does innovation, not just in your mind, because you often say you're an executive, but you have a producer's mind as well. Does innovating ever stop for you as a leader?
If you stop innovating, you stop succeeding. You have to innovate because you have to innovate because no matter where you are.
You can tell we're taping live.
There we go.
See how I did that?
That was fantastic. That was
an executive decision. Executive decision. Okay, pick it up from there, Neal.
So the point is, you have to keep innovating because our times don't stop. Everything changes, and it doesn't have to be COVID. People's lives change, their interests change, their demands change, the technology changes. You have to change with all of those. At the end of the day, it really is the voice of the consumer that counts, because they don't care whether you have pre-existing technology demands. They don't care if you thought you were planning something else. All they care is, are you meeting their needs? So unless you're in some field, and I'm not sure where it is, where people's needs will never, ever change, but they do. So you have to innovate to meet them.
Pick it up, Mary.
Yeah, Neal, I would love to know, where did your passion for public television come from? I mean, I know growing up in New Jersey, public television was a go-to, right? Sesame Street and all the other educational and also the arts programming. But where does your passion come from for the public television?
Well, growing up, I too had a lot of good experience with public television. I remember kids programs. I remember arts programs. I remember something like Monty Python that began on public television. So as a teenager, and I remember the first Watergate hearings being on TV, being on commercial, on public television. Then I worked for a long time in commercial television, and though I had great
ABC, I'm sorry,
experience,
Neil, ABC, and then the president over at NBC.
Yeah.
I mean, so you know that side as well. Go ahead.
you know, and I was very lucky and did some great things, but I could see over time that commercial demands meant some things you could do less of. And one of the things was that it's a commercial medium, right? That's how it works. So, I maybe can recall 5 or 6 times in my entire career at NBC where people said that program was really great. But I recall every day when I heard about how the ratings were and why they weren't high enough and what happened in the second half hour. That's part of what that is. When I got to public media, I realized that, and it's all about the impact you have. And that's what it's about. Sure, we care about the numbers, but the most important thing is how you touch people. And if you don't succeed, you try again.
Getting up at bat. Listen, Neil, I can't help, get up at bat. Neil is not just a very big Yankee fan. He is a Cowboys fan. I don't actually understand that, but that's another story. But by the way, I've asked you this before.
I was just going to ask Steve, I was hoping you would what is that? Where does that come from?
He told me, but I tried to forget.
So I'm a New Yorker in everything except professional football, because when I was a kid, the New York Giants fans gave me a very hard time. They were very mean to me. And I said, what would really make them crazy would be to root against, support their arch enemy, which are the Cowboys. And they were kind of fun then. That was kind of like Don Meredith, Craig Morton. They were a fun team to watch. Tom Landry was a former Giant, who was the head coach. So I decided, and then as you know, once you form a bond as a kid, it kind of stays. So I've been with them through thick and thin. Hopefully better days to come, but who knows?
Yeah, well, we're not going to talk about the Cowboys any longer, but I do want to, but here's the transition I want to make, Neil, in all seriousness. My mind, when I think about leadership, I think of, when I look at sports, to me, managerial decisions, player decisions, how Aaron Judge comports himself, how Derek Jeter comported himself, all those things are part of leadership for me. Do you connect sports to leadership and use those lessons, or to what degree do you, if you do, as the leader in public broadcasting that you are?
Oh, all the time. I mean, I think the things that make leaders successful in sports are things that make anyone successful. Good leaders are people who have ways to communicate with their employees, their teams. They know everybody's not the same. They make some values, some judgments about what's important, and they communicate those well. They're understanding when people don't always hit them, but they're not infinitely patient. They're flexible, because sports changes all the time, and though they have a game plan, it changes if the game itself changes. And then I think there's an evenness to it too, that people are really good at it. And baseball is a great example, right? There are 162 games. If you're really, really good, you're going to win 100 and something of them, right? So you're going to lose 50 or 60 games, even if you're really, really good. And the best players, the Jeters, the Judges, are incredibly even-tempered. Like, they enjoy their success, they accept their failure, they learn from it, and they move on. And I think that having that evenness as a leader is important, because if you rise and fall with every little thing, then people around you are going to react to that too. And we have to recognize we are in it for the long haul. Not everything will be perfect. We deal with the setbacks, we move on, we move forward.
Push you a little further on this. Outside of sports, you have 3 sons. Okay. I happen to have 3 sons as well. I use sports analogies all the time. I talk about leadership and like, oh God, here he goes with another leadership seminar. Where, translation, or here's the question. To what degree do you see yourself as someone who, as a parent, your responsibility to teach leadership, which is to me life, to your sons as you're co-parenting with a very strong leader as well, with your wife, Juju?
Well, the first thing is actually find a great co-parent. And I've been incredibly lucky in that.
Same here.
But having said that, I think the things are, I think you lead by example. So I think the things I want to show my kids is hard work's important. Having balance in your life's important. Taking responsibility is important. Treating people fairly and decently and equitably is important. So I think I want to lead by example. And I also think, I look at my boys, I love them all, but they're not the same. They each have things, they're good at some things, not always the same thing. It's not unlike how you manage people. You try to figure out what their strengths are and try to make sure that's the task you're having them do. And if the things they're not good at, you either try to coach them to say, here's how you can be better at it. And as you watch your kids grow, I'm sure I had the same experience. They're all different. They all mature at different ages. They get some things faster than other things. And though you love them all, you don't treat them all exactly the same way.
Yeah, and I better cover myself in this because in case our daughter Olivia is going to watch one-on-one, which she does on a regular basis because I force her to, she'll say, what about me? So there are 3 boys and our daughter Olivia. Mary, last question for Neal.
Yeah, sure. Neal, we talk a lot about grit on our television programming, and it's so funny. We've been doing this for years, Steve and I. And
Mary,
only
do you mind? Angela
Go up.
Duckworth. Angela Duckworth, grit. We were going to get
Like I
Angela
said, Neal,
Duckworth. She's the best, but go ahead.
He literally has props all over that desk. I don't know how he pulls this stuff
I got
out.
the scooter. I got Yogi Berra. We're going to talk about
Elephant? Do you have an elephant? Can you pull out an elephant right about now? I would just love your perspective on grit, Neal. You talked about obviously making it through the pandemic, making the best. That has to do with pivoting, but talk a little bit about grit in leadership.
Well, I mean, I love that book because I do think it's exactly right. The people who succeed in life aren't necessarily the smartest, though they're smart. They're not always the most gifted, but they're gifted. The thing they are is that they persevere. They recognize you don't give up. It is the thing about great athletes too, that the best athletes are out, 60% of the time. It is grinding away and making sure that, because I do believe you will get better, right? You'll improve, you'll work harder. And when you have setbacks, and you learn from them and you move on. And if you give up, you'll never succeed.
Neal, we got about a minute left, so I want to take full advantage of this. I'm a big believer that even though you've been in the business for a long time, I've been in the business for a long time, we've been trying to lead as best we can. We'd never stop learning. Where do you say you've made the greatest strides as a leader? Just say in the last few years. We talked about pivoting, COVID, et cetera, et cetera. But the greatest strides for you as a leader come where?
I think understanding the younger generation, that they expect and want different things. I think to me, the biggest change has been when I started, the idea was that your personal opinions never mattered. Your personal life never mattered. It was about you stay at work, you do your job. What happens outside the office stays outside the office. And what I've realized during COVID, and George Floyd has been a part of it, is that people do expect from their leaders some kind of reinforcement, either acknowledging the feelings they're having, acknowledging you can't just leave all your feelings outside work. And maybe that's because the times now are so tumultuous. The COVID has knocked down the walls between what's work and what isn't. And some of the issues are so emotionally draining. So I think it's as a leader being in touch with that.
As we wrap up, I'm going to say this. One of the themes that we'll explore on Lessons in Leadership moving forward is vulnerability, leadership and vulnerability. And I won't get on my soapbox, particularly on public broadcasting. That's not my job. I don't do that because that's not what we do. But I will say this. Leaders who believe that confidence means that you act as if you have all the answers. You act as if you're never concerned or fearful. You act as if you got it all together. In my view, that's not leadership. That's something different. I never admit mistakes. Well, not a great quality. That being said, Neal, I want to thank you for joining us on Lessons in Leadership. Our one-on-one audience will see this as well. To you and the team at the WNET Group, all of us and who are connected to, affiliated with public broadcasting, it's an honor to be part of this team. Thank you, Neal.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You got it. For Steve, for Mary, for our entire team, we thank you so much for watching. See you next time. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, Kessler Foundation, Veolia, Resourcing the World, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague, Mary Gamba, has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA, and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ, and Commerce Magazine.